Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a best of 5 series of Stormgate. What I've got for you today is a set of games played in the most recent version of the game. So the games of Stormgate that I've casted over the last couple of months, all 2, maybe 3 videos or so, they were all played on what they called the Devastator build of the beta of Stormgate. And that essentially was the very first version of the game where other people also got access to it outside of the development studio. This particular build is apparently the most recent version of the game, and they called it Elephant. So we go from Devastator to Elephant. Normally there's a little bit of a theme there, I can't quite discover it, but that doesn't really matter all too much. Right from the get-go though, I gotta say, things do look a little bit different, right? Maybe it's the quality of this video file that I'm casting off of. But one of the main complaints that I've read in the YouTube comments section, as well as on Reddit and on the internet in general, is unit legibility. And unless I'm mistaken, the colors at the very least do look a lot more intense. Yeah, the Vanguards are far more blue and the Infernals do look a lot more red. And at the same time, the map also looks a little bit more distinguished. Maybe it's something to do with the shadows as well? Either way, we'll have to wait until some big battles take place to see if maybe it's a little bit easier to follow than the Devastator build of the game. Either way, Kdong playing with the Vanguard, GregR playing with the Infernals. In case those names do not ring a bell, I'm familiar with Kdong. I don't think maybe I do know GregR, but I'm not entirely sure. Either way, this is an internal tournament played at the Frost Giant Studios. So this was a 8-man event where the developers of the game were playing against each other. Basically, the first few rounds were all best of 3s. This particular match, however, is a best of 5, and it's the finals of an internally played event. What that means is I guess both of these players are probably the most experienced Stormgate players in the world at the moment. Right? Because, I mean, they literally work on the game and they have been building it since the very start. So I can imagine at the very least that they will have a very good understanding of all of the ins and outs. Will they be better than the pro gamers? Honestly, like the ones that I've casted at least, there's a good chance that they will be a little bit better. Because even though the pro gamers in general are very fast, speed is very important, but not necessarily as important as strategy. So we'll have to find out together exactly what ended up going down. Now, alongside this new build and this video file, they also sent me over like 4 pages worth of patch notes. And I'll be honest with you, I did not really read all of it. I kind of glanced at some of the changes, and there are some big ones, but essentially every single unit, nice little scout right here from Kdong, every single unit and every single structure got like a dozen changes. And I can imagine that all of these changes are certainly not final. So, yeah, I could go ahead and study these patch notes for like an hour and then recite all of them, but I don't think it really matters all too much. They've changed some of the tech tree up, apparently, specifically for the Infernals. And one very significant change as well is that the white health bar, so that's the health bar that you can see right there above every single one of these Infernal units, it no longer degenerates off of Shroud. So Shroud is that, well, smoky looking stuff that is around every single one of those Infernal structures. It used to degenerate, but apparently that is no longer the case. They've also added a new unit to the Infernals. What is it called again? I will get to that in just a moment. I have got it open right here on my second monitor. The Imp gotten changes, the Fiend's gotten a bunch of changes, Macmedon, Shadowflyer, Doombringer, Weaver, Shroud, basically everything got changed. Yeah, it's kind of wild. Anyways, I'm hoping we're going to be seeing some of that new unit in this particular video as well. The unit is called Hellborne. That's all I have. I don't really know what it does, but we may very well be able to experience it together. Alrighty, so right from the get-go, it looks like we have a little bit of a more macro-focused game here, with GregR actually taking that catapult that is certainly not the final model for that particular unit, but he's a lot more chill right now with those Fiends, right? So in the past, in the previous build of this game, you needed to send those Fiends out onto the map right at the very start as soon as you had them, because they slowly bled out. Right now, since the white health no longer degenerates, I guess they will stay alive? Yeah, maybe they do need a little bit of white health to begin with, though. I'm not exactly sure how the mechanic works out. Anyways, this catapult, it's a neutral thing. You can see where the projected ability is about to go, so that's kind of cool. But this thing will just move across the map at a very slow pace after unlocking one of those neutral creep camps. So GregR is going to be trying to leverage that catapult into assaulting this base right here from Kdong. Nice little strategy here. Is it going to be enough? I mean, I don't really know exactly how much... That thing deals a lot of damage. Okay, I was going to say, I don't really know exactly how much damage it deals. But those structures right here for the Vanguard are in a world of trouble already. We have ourselves a lot of aggression here right at the very start of this game. This is very different than that Kiwian versus Mana series that I recently featured on the channel. We do have one of the Lancers here going to town. Yeah, trying his very best. He already did get one of his prestige upgrades. The dude is powerful, and he's gonna be microed backwards here. That's nice and all, but there's no denying that that catapult is putting in a lot of work. And honestly, I'm wondering if this is just a little too much already. Reinforcements are being sent across. You can see them moving right now on the mini-map. It seems that GregR is just rallying everything that he's got towards the other side. He's also brought a little bit of Shroud from the other side of the map, so his units will actually regenerate a little bit of that white health. I wonder if that's going to be the final name of that particular health bar. I honestly doubt it, but white health bar and a regular health bar, it's a little bit of a funky mechanic. Either way, they do, yeah, generate a little bit of it. So apparently he's got himself like a little structure that allows him to generate some of that Shroud close to his opponent's side of the map. We have a flying unit available right now for Kdong. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of anti-air currently out right here, but now, yeah, we have a whole lot of those additional units showing up. Second airplane, I don't know what those units are called, but it is currently flying towards those engaging units as well. Okay, it looks like he's actually thinking about backing up. So, is that the habitat? Is the habitat? Hold up, I have to look at the changes to the habitat. I did see it right here in the list. It seems like the unit or the structure itself has gotten a bunch of updates as well. So the habitat build time has been increased, the health has been decreased. It has a new ability called Upgrade to Solar Habitat, and another one called Upgrade to Rampart. Okay, now it doesn't say exactly what that is, but apparently, essentially, the supply depot equivalent of the Vanguard can be upgraded to 2 different structures. And one of them, it seems to be behaving right now sort of like a shield battery, right? It seems to be regenerating. Now, what also seems to be the case, though, is Kdong being in a ton of trouble. Yeah, he's doing his best to try and hold on here. He is not really in a critical situation just yet, but with more and more reinforcements going across the map, I've got a feeling that this will just get worse over time right here for the Vanguard player. In the meantime, expansions are being set up. A third base is being set up right here for GregR. GregR, I guess. Maybe it's not GregR. Maybe it's actually just GregR. Maybe they just have like multiple Gregs working at the Frost Giant studio, and they decided to have Greg L, Greg M, and GregR. I'm not sure if this is his gamer tag. Either way, yeah, there's just so many units here available, and they're range damage dealers, right? So at this point, there's just nothing here quite available for Kdong to protect against all of this. He's losing his structures, and maybe that habitat has got a fancy new ability, but it also lost a little bit of HP. GG is cold, and it's Greg who wins game number 1. Okay, game number 2. Yeah, the units really do look easier to read. Am I crazy? Things do just look a little bit brighter, I guess. Unit legibility is... Maybe I'm just more familiar with the game, but in my mind, I'd have to compare it to my previous videos, but in my mind, this really is a lot easier to read here so far. Anyhow, besides adding on a lot of changes to the multiplayer version of the game, apparently they've also made a bunch of upgrades to the other game modes. So there's a new co-op hero, is what I am reading here in the patch notes, named Malok, an Infernal caster. There's a new look for co-op mode, and there's an introduction of hero XP, okay. Both Malok and Blockade will now unlock their unique abilities, units, and passive gradually as they level up across multiple co-op matches, okay. There's a new look apparently to ranked mode, so to 1 versus 1. Our 1v1 has a fantastic new look to show off the factions of Stormgate as you queue up. There's leagues and tiers. So the leagues are Aspirant, Bronze, Silver, Gold, Platinum, Diamond, and Master. Each league is subdivided rather into 3 number tiers. So from tier 3 all the way up to tier 1. So you can be Aspirant 2. Alright. Why did we go with Aspirant? Why did we have to add something below Bronze League? I'm not exactly sure. Either way, there's also Transparent MMR. So apparently, yeah, we've heard your feedback and we now display your exact MMR for each faction on the 1 versus 1 versus screen. Okay. That took StarCraft 2 literally like 8 years before we finally got to see it. Which... Maybe it does not sound like such a big deal, but it really is so nice to be able to see exactly what your ranking is, rather than just relying on like, oh, I'm gold 3. You still can't really properly see it that easily of your opponent, but not until the higher leagues anyways. Looks like GregR here has decided to rush out the resource camp, using those fiends of his as well as the brute. I'm forgetting the name of that other unit. I can probably find it. Hold up. There's so many changes that I'm sure it has gone through a lot of updates too. So we have the brute. The brute cost has been increased from 100 to 150. Supply cost has been increased from 2 to 3. That's, by the way, that brute looking dude, right? The one that can split itself into a bunch of fiends. It's like a... It reminds me of a grunt a little bit, like an orcish grunt from Warcraft. Anyways, the brute now always drops 2 fiends on death, even if you did not cast Sunder Soul. Okay. When you're selecting multiple brutes, Sunder Soul will now always activate on the ones with lowest health. So Sunder Soul is the ability that forces it to rip itself into 2. That's interesting, so you don't actually have to micro it anymore, because it's always going to use it regardless. Not exactly sure if I love that. Ah, we have the Gaunt. So the Gaunt's range has been increased from 4.5 to 5.5 and now infest all enemies on hit without an upgrade. Hemoglaive Infusion ability renamed to Reaper's Rush. Hemoglaive apparently was a little too edgy, huh? Maybe a little bit too medical. Looks like he's found a little bit of an angle here, Greg. Trying his very best to see if maybe he can snipe a few of those bobs. The bobs are the worker units right here for the Vanguard going around the site. Okay. Yeah, good defense right here by Kdong. Not really running into a lot of issues. So I'm trying to think what is exactly the reason right now to force your brute to split into 2, other than I guess just needing other units. But why manually cast it if it's gonna activate it automatically regardless, you know? If you're gonna clean out creep camps, you may as well, yeah, just let it automatically split itself into 2s. Anyways, Hemoglaive Infusion upgrade has been replaced, right, with the Reaper's Rush upgrades. And Reaper Rush, it allows the Gaunt to use the Reaper's Rush ability. And it's researched at the Ritual Chamber for 100, but it doesn't say what Reaper Rush does. I obviously don't have access to this version of the game yet. So I am very much so guessing along with you here exactly to what ends up going down. I imagine, by the way, that a lot of these casts are going to get very messy because I just... well, have no way to practice the game before uploading this video, right? So, yeah, I can imagine that things may get a little bit confusing. Now, we have a Twilight Spire. I hope it doesn't make it any less entertaining, though. We have a Twilight Spire. Let me see. So, the Twilight Spire cost has been decreased, and the requirement has changed from Greater Shrine to Iron Vault or Conclave. Huh. So, the Iron Vault or the Conclave, those are the structures for the Gaunts and then for the Brutes. And apparently, now you no longer need to be at Greater Shrine, which is basically the lair, right? So the upgraded main structure. Apparently, now you just need to have one of these other things down. Interesting. Okay, so we're gonna see some different units. Now, the Doombringer used to be built at the Twilight Spire, but apparently that one has been moved to the Conclave. Okay. The Shadow Flyer is now built at the Twilight Spire instead of the Shrine. Movement speed has been increased, Bloodburst missile acceleration is increased, max speed has decreased, Sanguine Surge upgrade no longer increases the Shadow Flyer's movement speed by 50%. Okay, it doesn't really matter all too much. We'll have to see exactly what unit he decides to make here in just a moment. Yeah, there's some rich Therium. Is it Therium? I always get those two mixed up as well, my god. Minerals and gas. Can we just gold them? Maybe we should call them gold and lumber. Yeah. We require more lumber. More lumber is required. Alright, we got ourselves a little bit of a dropship, an evac here. Let me see if there's any changes to that. I'm sure there are. There's a new ability called Sky Mine. Places a Sky Mine behind the unit that lasts for 120 seconds. Upon activation by an enemy air unit, the Sky Mine will chase down its target and detonate, dealing 50 damage to air units in an area, slowing them as well for 10 seconds. Skymine vision range has been increased, and the Skymine activation time has been decreased as well from 5 to 3. Basically, what I'm saying is everything looks the same, but everything's changed. Okay. Alright, fair enough. Now, they are passing each other here in the middle of the map. Yeah, okay. We've got ourselves a couple of the big boys jumping out. Those Gatling guns don't mess around. And look at how much money he's actually getting from it. Not bad at all. I wish there was a nicer indicator to show who got those resources there, right? Because stealing creep camps is going to be massive in this game. Since there's no item drops or anything like that, knowing exactly what you're playing against is huge. Now, there indeed are those flying units. You can try and pick them up and boost away. Okay. Looks like they've got that medevac boost ability. My god, it lasts ages. What? He just boosted all the way home? No way. He didn't know that he was going to get chased like that, and he just... Okay. You got his get out of jail for free card. Yeah, I think a lot of those values are certainly going to be adjusted. Now, Greg is effectively creating a bit of a soft contain right here on his opponent's bases. So he's already gone up to 3 base economy himself. But at the moment, yeah, the opponent, Kdong right here, is going to have a tough time really expanding behind it. So those units kind of remind me a little bit of Mutalisks. Dealing a bunch of damage. Their units' movement ability, or like the attack ability, does not look quite as satisfying to me as Mutalisks. They glide around a little bit too much for my liking. Yeah. Anyways, he does end up sniping a few troops. That repair turret trying his very best. Micro here done as well with the dropship. Not bad at all. The repair-o-matic. Yeah, so the way that these neutral defensive structures work for the Vanguard is you basically make one of those structures and then you pop a unit inside of it. And if I'm not mistaken, that particular repair-o-matic, that is from the structure being built by a Bob and then a Bob going inside of it too. So you make the sentry post and then you can put an exo in it to create like a firing turret. You can, well, for example, put a bunch of other dudes in here too. So we've essentially rushed out a lot of these flying troops right here for the Infernals. Was it really worth it? I mean, they seem quite strong, but I don't think... I mean, they're difficult to follow, right? So if you look at the ground units and the way that they engage, I'm having a much easier time seeing exactly what they do, personally at least, when I look at the engagements. With these guys, with their weird little attack with that, like, purplish line, I don't think I'm quite as big a fan yet. But I can imagine that is also not... Yeah, so they have Binding Saliva and whatever else the other upgrade is. I don't really know exactly what it does. But essentially what we did right here is rush out these Spriggans, and we're trying to get a whole lot of damage done on the other side of the map. Okay, I just Control-F'd Spriggan. Apparently Spriggans did not get any upgrades or any changes in this particular build of the game. You see what I mean? Like, they glide around a lot. And that attack animation is very difficult for me to follow. I guess it looks pretty in isolation, but the readability is not my favorite. Okay. Undying Flames. So they have a bunch of upgrades, and we did rush them out, but was that really worthwhile? Well, it may be worthwhile in the sense that GregR here has successfully contained Kdong. Kdong is just chilling right here on 2 bases, not really capable of doing a lot. He's going for an army made up out of heavy hitters. So I guess this may be like the Stormgate equivalent currently of like a Death Ball? Is that what we're aiming for? It may just be the case. But he's got full map control right now. Now there is that backdoor expansion here, so those trees are being knocked down. That lumber. Need more lumber. Right. He's knocked those down with the bobs. Although he could have been... Well, he could have been zooming through that as well, using his big boy units. Apparently we're not going to. In the meantime... Ooh! Are those the new ones? They's got... Yeah, they have to be. We have a couple of the Kodos as well. The Kodos that aren't Kodos. The Hellborne. It's a long-ranged artillery unit that deals cone damage on weapon impact. Built at the Iron Vault, and it requires the Shadow Cleft. Interesting. Okay. So we'll see how powerful they are. A long-ranged artillery unit for the Infernals. So we already did see those tanks in the past for the Vanguard. Apparently this is, I guess, the tank equivalent, but then for the Vanguard, for the Infernals instead. Oh, that was already one of them. Yeah, they're being thrown right here, and you can see that cone-based attack. So on impact, the cone damage is quite obvious. Oh my god, they're so derpy. Look at their little legs. Yeah, no, that's definitely not final yet either. They're so slow, my god. They remind me a little bit of Asmodan in Heroes of the Storm. Maybe that's actually what they do as well with their abilities. Now we have these, I guess, these Scourge-like units chasing them down and actually sniping all of those area units with the exception of one. Not a bad play right there by Greg. Yeah, he's got some of those Shadow Flyers just chilling. We see a lot more unit variety from the developers of the game than we did from the StarCraft pros. Dude, they look exactly like Asmodan. Yeah, it's funny, because if you look at all the units in these games, right, the inspiration is quite obvious. Anyways, is there enough right now for GregR to push through this? He's got a lot of Magmadons, it seems. Wait, are those... They do look like Magmadons, but I think they've gotten maybe like a visual change. I wish I could click on units, but again, I'm not actually doing this from like a replay or whatever. This is, I guess, a live observed game. There's just way too much for Greg, right? Like, his economy has been off the charts for ages, and he's just capable of producing way more stuff here than Kdong. Not bad at all. Yeah, they definitely behave differently. No longer has the burrow charge ability. Ah, it no longer has the flame coil ability either. Okay, so essentially everything has changed. Either way, GG is cold. GregR wins game number 2. All right, so that already brings us to match point right here for GregR. That was a classic example, though, of it not really mattering that much what type of unit you're making, but Greg just simply had his unit out, or his opponent rather, outproduced there for a long time. So Kdong, yeah, he may try and get back, but if you're playing 2 bases and you're just sort of sitting there doing a whole lot of nothing for the better part of 10 minutes, at some point your opponent is just going to show up with a maxed out army. And I'm glad actually to see that that is a mechanic that is in play, because, you know, if that was, so obviously it sucks right there for Kdong, but if he was able to just turtle on 2 bases for 10 minutes, do a whole lot of nothing and just make a death ball, that would kind of suck, right? Because at that point, if he would not be stoppable, I can guarantee you that the majority of the playstyles you would see is just players sitting back and doing a whole lot of nothing. So I'm glad to see that macro still gets rewarded. Because obviously, besides just having more bases, Greg also managed to shut down all of the resource camps all around the map. So he got even more money that way. So having map control certainly seems to be a very critical part of the game. You know, one thing that also may have changed is the camera movement. Just the observer camera seems way smoother than it once was. Yeah. I think that actually, I'm only just now picking up on that, but I think it may be the camera movement too that is just a lot more refined than what we had in the past. The zooming in and out though is still very jittery, but that's alright. Alrighty, so barracks coming up right here for Kdong. I would like to see him play a bit more of an active style. Because Greg right now is going to have a lot of wiggle room. He can do whatever he likes. Goes for a fast expand. He's already roaming the map here with one of his brutes. Rushing out of Conclave once again. So he's going Iron Vault together with Conclave almost every time. And I guess the idea is that you can make, yeah, both the brutes as well as the gaunts relatively easily. So the gaunts are essentially like your marine equivalent with the Infernals. And I guess we have, well, the tanky dudes, right? The big boys. Ready to, yeah, so that's the dream team right over there. Those two that are moving on the left side of the screen right now. Those 2 units just work really nicely together. They're like Roach Hydra, you know? Except they come out at like minute 1. Yeah, I'm not sure if we should see both of these units this early on into the game, though. Like, I'm sure it's really good in the current version of the game, but I'm not exactly sure if it is, like, strategically the nicest thing to just be able to go for both of them always. Because they seem to synergize very well. Like, in a sense, the gaunts are just shooting over the backs of those big boys, and then the brutes just, yeah, deal a lot of damage too, but they're mostly just there for tanking purposes. So we have a tank together with a, like a glass cannon. Okay. So some of those camps here are being skipped in favor of just straight up aggression. So currently Kdong is caught with his pants down, not quite aware of the fact that his opponent was, yeah, engaging him here. So we're just gonna see some aggression on the bobs. defensive ability on that command post immediately gets activated, and the Lancers are gonna start hunting this down. So notice the difference here compared to what we saw in that game that Killian played against Mana. Killian was going for a lot of scouts. That is not the case here at all for Kdong. He is just rushing out Lancers. He seems to be a fan of going into a bunch of those Exos as well. So that's the Marine-looking guys. Now we do have a lot of Lancers, though. Yeah, double barracks is really nice here. So how does this exactly work out? This already looks really nice right here for Greg. Yeah, I guess as soon as that defensive ability is once again available on the command post, and we have no way of knowing whether or not it is. Yeah. Another disadvantage right here for Greg is just the fact that we have a lot of these units spawning much closer to the combat, so the defender's advantage right here for Kdong is very significant. He was not really achieving all too much with this attack, and he decided to stick around for a really long time. And ultimately, right, against the Vanguard, that's actually pretty bad, because he does get that prestige system. So I don't know if we have any... No, I searched Control F for prestige. I don't see any particular changes to that right now, or maybe they did write it under a different name. Either way, if you're feeding units and you're bleeding them out against the Vanguard, you will make them more powerful. Yeah. Amount of XP needed to level up to level 1 has been reduced by 33%, to level 2, 29%, and to level 3, 25%. Okay. I see. So essentially what that comes down to is that the units do level up a little bit quicker. We have Twilight Spires once again going down here for Greg. Maybe ready to rush out some of those Spriggan once more. I like the Asmodans, I'm not gonna lie, but I think that previous game did not really show them in their full strength. Now, by the way, if you want to support the developers, the easiest way of doing so is by wishlisting this game on Steam. So if you haven't already, make sure you add this game to your wishlist on Steam. I'll go ahead and post a link to the Steam page down below the description of this video. And while you're at it, also make sure you hit that like button. It really does help. I know it's kind of annoying whenever YouTubers ask you to hit the like button, but yeah, if you're a fan of real-time strategy, that's the easiest thing you can do. It takes like half a second, and it really does help. So, thank you. Couple of medtechs trying to reinforce, but misrallied through the center of the map, and that means that right now, yeah, now it's a good opportunity to split those brutes into twos and to send those fiends after those reinforcing units, because the medtechs are not cheap. Let me see, did they get any changes? Yes. Both versions of Nanoswarm no longer stack with other instances of Nanoswarm. Okay, so I guess that means that units can only get healed by one of those medtechs at the same time, rather than like half a dozen medtechs just keeping one really big unit alive together. That would be sick, man. Imagine like a 1 Ultralisk, 20 Queen army. You can effectively just keep it alive indefinitely. Apparently no longer the case right here for the medtechs. I'm not crazy, right? Like, the units really do look a lot more distinguished somehow. Yeah, it doesn't say anything in the patch notes regarding that, but I can also imagine that they made so many changes that they can't quite put down everything. And if you work on this game every day, that's maybe not one of the things you really notice anymore, but it is very clear to me that it looks different. We also have music in the background, by the way. That was one of my complaints last time. As we do have now Kdong going across. So you can see which units are promoted, by the way, by that little icon right next to their health bar. That little yellowish military symbol, whatever it is called. I don't think there's actually enough. Yeah, so Greg here, busy teching up. Once again, going into that double, I think it's called Twilight Spire. Gets those Spriggan going. There's not a lot of anti-air currently available. Decent micro on that first Exo. The other one in a lot of trouble, but I think Kdong should just go. No, go, 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 go! Go! No, other way! Other way! Kdong, there's nothing! I guess he's worried about reinforcing Spriggans? But this kind of looks like backing up with Mass Roach against Mutalisks, you know? Like, that's not what you should... Yeah, you should just go across the map. No, not that way! Across! To the natural! Oh, no. Kdong with the next level BM over here. Yeah, those Spriggans do build fast, but look at how little damage they actually do here against the Lancers. Okay, I think he just wants to play this safe. Yeah. Oh, no, this is not safe, though. This is not safe. Like, meeting these Spriggans in the middle of the map head-on with, like, 5 Exos seems a little risky to me. This is also a perfect opportunity for, like, a little Fiend run-by over at the bottom of the map. Because Kdong is moving around his entire army in one control group. Okay, now we're going across the map. Yeah, I don't really like this sequence of events over here, but I don't think it really matters that much in the end. Unless Greg has been able to remax, or at least reproduce a lot of his units. I don't actually know if we have seen maxed out armies at all. Like, again, the observer interface does not show us the supply counts. But I've got a feeling it doesn't really matter that much. Nah. Go! I think you can fight this, man. That Shroud is kind of scary, I guess. The Shroud Stone is also dangerous. Well, Kdong is a lot more familiar with the game, so he must know what he's doing. But I think he's a little too concerned. He's giving those Spriggan a little too much credit. And ultimately, well, we do have 3 base economy right now for the Infernal player. Kdong obviously also feeling the heat of the fact that he is 2-0 behind in this series. One of the big boys has shown up. Question is there enough? Yeah, so the Weaver. Let me see, is there any changes to the Weaver? Health has been decreased by 30. Okay, Lash can now only target deployed units. So it effectively has like a Viper-like ability from StarCraft 2, where you can pull units in the direction of the Weaver. Weapon damage has been changed from 20 to question mark, question mark, question mark. Okay. And there's a new passive trait called Soul Ripper. This unit's a weapon, deals 10% of the target unit's max health. And 5% to structures. Ah, so it now deals percentage-based damage. That means it's terrible against smaller units, I guess, because it attacks so slowly. Interesting. It deals 5% of the structure's max HP. So the Magmadons have been changed entirely. I didn't quite get to that yet, but they apparently have a new upgrade called Demon Hoof Tremors. It allows the Magmadon's trample ability to periodically stun nearby enemy ground units. So I guess that charge ability that they had was a little bit too powerful. Yeah, it no longer has the burrow charge ability. Instead, it's got trample. Goes into a rampage, pushing nearby units out of the Magmadon's path and dealing 150 damage over 6 seconds to nearby enemy ground units, plus it destroys trees. So it still has a similar looking ability, but it no longer stuns, it seems. Oh, look at them. Opening up the little meadow here in the middle of the map. Okay, so there is a base in the middle of this map that has 2 gold mines. Together with... Well, it's not gold, it's Therium and Luminite, right? I always get them mixed up, though. Is the yellow one Therium or is that Luminite? I think Therium is the high-tier stuff and Luminite is the low-tier stuff. But I'm not exactly sure. Anyhow, honestly, Greg has done an excellent job getting back into this. I think he was given a little bit too much time, but this is still a very scary army, though. Oh, he's just marching through all of the trees. You love to see it. A couple of Hellborne have also joined in. Love the split off right there, sending a few of the troops in the direction of that newly acquired base here by the Vanguard player. Fiend also joining in, deals a ton of damage. Looks like the damage output of the Hellborne, though, is decent, but nothing all too crazy, considering it's literally a ball of lava being thrown at your head. Hey, am I crazy, though? Look at the unit legibility, right? Like, this is so much easier to follow. Some of it is probably experience to me just seeing more games, but this really does look a lot easier to follow overall. Anyhow. Nice little macro game, though. It's just trampling right here on one of those Exos. Those Exos are insane. So the Exos also did get a bunch of upgrades. Or updates, rather. So the cost has been increased by 25. So it used to be 125, now it's 125.25. Weapon range was increased from 6 to 7, and the damage was changed from 16 plus 3 versus heavy to just a flat 19. Okay. I think there's ultimately just still too much. Yeah. I think this game probably could have been won, at least in my mind, a little while ago by the Vanguard player. But Kdong decided to play this as safe as possible. Engages these imps. Honestly, man, those upgraded exos are insane. Look at them. They have that double time ability too, right? Or is double down, double time? It's something like that. It basically just makes them more powerful and allows them to disengage and chase a lot easier. I guess they're not amazing against structures, but at this point, the amount of stuff, just stuff, that Kdong has here is very significant. He decided to add a little bit of frontline in the mix too, in the form of those Lancers. Third base right now in a ton of trouble. Middle base, though, on the meadow here, has been taken, yeah. And this is a very, very valuable base. Kdong does not realize that that base has been taken, and there's 2 gold mines available. So that's essentially a double base, where there's twice as many resources that can be harvested. I wish I could see how much of a bank both of these players had. I've got a feeling Greg has a bunch of money in the bank right now. Yeah, the unit veterancy is incredible, though. Like, incredibly useful. I don't think I love it, personally. I think unit veterancy just makes the games more complex. But considering it's only something that's available for the Vanguard and not for the Infernals, I maybe don't mind it so much. I guess it's like their unique ability, you know? We've had the white health bar for the Infernals, and now we have a little bit of a different mechanic here as well for the Vanguard. Yeah, so when you're feeding your opponent like that, it does not make things better. So this upgraded tier 3 unit, or this, well, triple upgraded unit right here for our player in blue is just insane. He's got so many of them right now, too. Yeah, there's just nothing you can do. You can try and trample here a little bit, Greg, but I think that's about it. Unless we have a lot of money that still needs to be spent. Yeah, GG is cold. Kdong gets a point on the board. Okay, this is not a map I'm familiar with. It is apparently called Boneyard. And looking at the minimap, it looks ginormous. Okay. I'm excited to see what the ultimate units in this game are going to be like. At this point, yeah, there's still a lot of units missing for both of these factions, right? And word on the street has it that there may also be a third faction added. So that is going to change up the dynamic entirely. Honestly, if this game only had 2 factions, I don't think it would be particularly great. I've been thinking about it a lot, right? Like, what exactly, as we once again have a Conclave and an Iron Vault right here. So Greg essentially just doing the same thing again. Going for the resource camp once more. If you only have 2 factions in the game, how interesting would that be? Well, I guess you kind of have like a Warcraft 2 scenario, right? So Warcraft 2, 2 factions if I'm not mistaken. Then we have StarCraft, StarCraft 2. Both of them have, well, 3 factions, the Terran, the Zerg, and the Protoss, right? And then in Warcraft 3, they have 4 factions, where they have also got the Undead, and the Orcs, and the Elves, and the Humans, right? What is the correct number of factions to have in a 1 versus 1 multiplayer RTS game? Because the Blizzard-like RTS games have had anywhere between 2 and 4. If you compare that to an Age of Empires, where they add like 4 every other month, it feels like, it's a little bit different, right? Okay, maybe not every other month. But with the most recent DLC they added to that game, they did add a bunch of new stuff to it as well. A bunch of new factions. Like, as a StarCraft player, that's kind of impossible to imagine, because adding 2 factions to StarCraft 2 would change everything. Like, that would, yeah, make the game pretty much unplayable in a lot of people's eyes. I think, for the most part, you can probably go no more than 4 factions. I want to say 4 at the absolute most. Because the thing in Warcraft 3, for example, is that in certain periods of the game's meta, certain factions were just not playable. Or at least not really balanced to be playable. It's very difficult when you add an extra layer, or like an extra faction to the game. In general, it just makes everything a lot more complex, right? Because the amount of matchups that are available and that need to be balanced goes through the roof the more you add. So I would say 3 is probably kind of ideal, with maybe 4 being an option. But I honestly don't know. Yeah. Obviously, it is a really exciting way to hype up the game, right? Say you have like a DLC plant or something, or like an expansion pack. Having an entirely new faction, my god, that is going to get you a lot of attention. But I'm glad that they did not go that way in StarCraft 2, you know? Would have been insane if like a 4th race got added. It, well, may have been working out for a while, but I'm a little afraid for the long-term stability. But I think 2 is a bit too plain. 2 is a little too boring. So I think we're going to probably end up with 3 to 4 factions in this game, if I were to make a guess. Or maybe that's just me hoping that we're going to get a little bit more than 2. Anyways, Buzzsaw Cannon over here set up on this newly... Actually, no. This is not the newly acquired expansion. This is the main base right here. Looks like the infrastructure for our Vanguard player has been made over in the natural. Greg has found a beautiful angle to be fighting his opponent from. Okay. So, a couple of those gaunts. They're within range of the command post. And more of them are making their way across the map as well. You can see those little bounces happening as well as the gaunts attack. This could actually be a disaster right now for Kdong. Where's his unit producing structures? Does he have anything in the natural? I would love to see what his natural expansion looks like, because his main is in a world of trouble. Yeah, those gaunts are just able to outrange this, and there's just not really that much available here. So, apparently this is the moment when we decide to commit. Does he have enough? I'm not convinced that he does. Yeah, he's got a bunch of production over there as well, but I wonder if maybe those Bobs should activate their defensive ability on the command post too and then go from there. Looks like the repair has been activated. More and more reinforcements coming across the map. Second base right now up and running as well for Greg, who's smelling blood in the water here. Greg, where you going? We could have at the very least tried to harass the natural now that the ability is on cooldown. Okay, well, it looks like Kdong did manage to hold on in the main base. It's hard for me to quantify how powerful that defensive cooldown on the command post is. So it gives the shield 2 targets, right, that are within range. It feels a little bit like a get out of jail for free card, because there's no indicator for us exactly when it's going to be available again. It reminds me a little bit of like a battery overcharge, I suppose, but then for a lot more units. I don't know if I am structurally a huge fan of that. Although I'm being very critical now. Again, early production stage of the game. Every time though you do a field attack against the Vanguard, you do get punished in the form of those promotions. So one of the Lancers already gotten promoted once. The longer you keep them around for, the longer you keep them alive, the more powerful they will be as well over the course of the game. Looks like there's a fight happening over here. There we go. Looks like one of those drop ships managed to drop right over here inside of the natural expansion. So that is called a Doombringer. Did we get any updates to the Doombringer? We did. Health increased from 250 to 260. Cost increased as well. Supply cost increased from 3 to 4. Built from the Conclave instead of the Twilight Spire. Ah, okay. And a requirement has been changed from a ritual chamber to a greater shrine. Okay. So, yeah, the tech route has been changed quite a bit, actually, for the Infernals. Seems like all of the higher tier units just have a different requirement now. Small amount of damage being done. Flak cannon, though, coming up here as well, coming online. Doombringer is cool. Being able to transport a bunch of units and then supply them with a bit of that defensive shroud, very handy. But yeah, the more and more of these no, we're bleeding out. I don't think we can fight this. Greg, we gotta get out. Whoa. That's a fascinating little ability there. Okay. Yeah, so my main takeaway here, without having compared anything, to my previous uploads is that somehow, some way, units are easier to distinguish in an engagement. And some of it definitely is becoming, or is me becoming more familiar with the game, which is fair. But I think a lot of it is also to do with the fact that they have made some changes, especially to the colors, but maybe also like unit sharpness. Maybe some of the shadows. Maybe some of the highlights on some of the troops and trees and whatnot has changed as well. Maybe the difficulty of the terrain, right? Like the legibility of the terrain has been changed as well. The amount of detail is maybe just a little bit more bland. So the attention goes more to the units themselves. I'm not exactly sure, but it does seem to be quite significant. Health camp right there, activated by the way by Kdong. He's got a big amount of units and they're well upgraded, but does he have it big enough? Dude, this backdoor entrance into the main base is horrible. This map is not it, man. I don't like that idea at all. There's a massive ramp. Oh, that is just super easy to engage into. I think these are the type of maps we're gonna look back at in a couple years from now and just giggle about. I think we should probably move into the Shroud with more of those units on the right side of this engagement. Those Gaunts are not quite as tanky as they could be. Yeah, reinforcing units once again popping out of the barracks. We're gonna... Alright. Say goodbye and leave that area behind once more. The more games I see though, the more clear it is that like we do miss a bunch of units. Like we see the same 4 or so units from both sides pretty much all the time, and that's mostly because there's just nothing to really be worried about, right? Like if you lose a big fight in StarCraft 2, yes, your opponent can make more of the same, right? Same for Warcraft 3, Warcraft, whatever, any RTS game. You lose a big fight, sure, your opponent can respond by, first off, just making more of the same units they were already making and try to win the game with that. But there's always the scary thought of them teching up to higher tier units, right? You lose a bunch of your ground units in a Zerg versus Protoss, your Stalkers get destroyed, you're kind of stuck on that Twilight Council tech. Maybe you've got a Robo facility, right, that you used to make a Prism, and then boom, next thing you know, you're going up against Brute Lords. And that puts a timer on your strategies. That puts a timer on all of your builds. So, I'm missing that a little bit, you know? Because there's nothing here on the horizon that both of these players can really go for. Yeah, they're going for more of the same. Yeah, they can take more expansions. Yeah, they can swarm, I guess, and make a lot of troops. But I'm kind of missing that tech advantage here. I guess you get the upgrade advantage on those, well, Vanguard units as more and more of them get promoted. But I'm missing that a little bit. But that is something that needs to still just be finished. I'm assuming at the very least that our Hellborne here, that new unit, that kind of reminds me of Asmodon. Or, Asmodon? No, what's his name? Asmodan? Asmodan, that's it, yes. I don't think he's considered to be a tier 3 unit. I'm pretty sure that's also like your mid-game equivalent here for the Infernals. Okay, now the question is, will we be going to game number 5? There is just more economy here available, it seems, for our player in red. And that's a bit of a theme here. It seems like he has to try to win the game early. Oh my god, he just split all of his brutes into little dudes. Does he have enough? He's going for the full surround. Cool play right here by Greg, trying to... No! Asmodan, you gotta shoot over here, bro. Your splash damage is needed down south. I think Greg may just have enough, although a lot of those Exos do stay alive for a long time. Those Fiends, not very sustainable at all. Okay, he actually has to double down and get on out of here. That does mean that some of the Fiends, very fast-paced units, are chasing down these troops. Lancer's in a little bit of trouble. Looks like the Medtechs will just barely be able to keep these units alive. The Kodos over here. The Masmodons. No, Magmodons? Dude, learning unit names? I'm not very good at recognizing people's names, or remembering people's names, rather, okay? I've never really been particularly great at that. Learning unit names in a new multiplayer game? That is gonna be a struggle for me. Yeah, that's gonna take me at least a couple months, I would say. But you guys know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Kodos, right? Oh my god, he does it again! All of the Fiends decide to tear themselves into twos. They're once again trying to get the wraparound over here. This expansion is very important for Kdong. If he does not get it up and running, he's in a world of trouble. And, well, his defensive structure has already been set down over there. But it lives. For now. It does live for the time being. Here we go. Another surround is going to be attempted. Units are going to be coming in from the north. Units coming in from the south. I mean, the DPS right here of these Exos is still absurd to me. They deal so much damage. They just seem so slippery as well. Okay, more and more units are popping out. Honestly, this may be doable. Yeah, I think Kdong may actually just be able to defend this. I don't know how long a mine lasts in this game. Like, say, at this point, right? Is Greg running out of resources in the main base and in the natural? Because he had those taken pretty early. That is another big strategic question here. There's no indicator for us to show how much money there actually is remaining in those mines of his. Because he's been pushing for a long time. He's been dealing a lot of damage as well, but if this is coming at the cost of, well, him running out of resources, then it's probably not actually that great in the end. Even though he's been dealing a bunch of damage, I don't think he will quite break even. Even the Bobs apparently can get upgraded too. They can get prestiged as well. Yeah, so Greg is going to continue expanding. He's now moving to the 12 o'clock position on the map. These resources running a little skinny, but we have no indicator. Yeah, there's a lot more of it available, as our observer is pointing out. But there's no way for us to know exactly how much money there actually is for both of these players. Overall, though, I gotta say, the Elephant build does seem like a significant improvement over the Devastator build. Makes me very curious what the final product of this game is gonna look like. Yeah. So here's the main key, right? It's already fun. Like, the game is already in a state where it's fun to watch and fun to play. That, I guess, is our main goal for now. That's the best way to judge it. It's got potential for sure. Yep. Oh, here's all the reinforcements for Greg. Yeah, I think Greg decided to smash his piggy bank. Add a ton of Hellborns into the mix as well. A Lancer should see it. One of those Lancers currently going for that base up north. Kdong trying to figure out how much money the opponent truly has. No worries, Kdong. I'm wondering the same thing. Careful now, Greg. Don't lose your units for free. Don't give them any additional stuff. I think he's ready to engage this. Yep. Ooh, that animation's really slow. Yeah, that range is insane, though. Those Hellborns not messing around. Look at the Kodo here going to town as well, man. So much life. It did not quite seem that tanky to me in the past, but very cool unit composition right here. Map design is another one of those things, though, that at least if you compare it to the other RTS games out there, most notably StarCraft 2 and StarCraft 1, I guess, but the maps that Blizzard made at the time, when they were still in charge of map making, they were what the kids call mid, okay? Most of them were not even mid, they were pretty terrible in hindsight. I can imagine we're gonna see a similar thing as well in this game. Even though it's a labor of love and I'm sure somebody has tried their very best, this does not seem like that great of a map to me. But either way, look at the amount of Fiends creating a full wraparound, allowing those Hellborne to deal a ton of splash damage. Again though, oh my god, look at the amount of... Wait, what? Is Greg actually losing this? No way! That was like the perfect fight for him, no? Fiends coming in from the back, and he had one of those Magmadons in the middle of that fight, stunning all of those units in blue, but Kdong has to run away? That did not see, or sorry, Kdong is the one that like wins that fight, and I don't think he really microed that very much, did he? I think he just stood there. I think Greg actually loses this. Yeah, so the prestige is very difficult for me to like notice. Oh, we have a flayed dragon. This is a tier 3 unit. Not a very easy one to get to, but that's an extremely powerful dragon. So there's a mechanic in this game that is quite difficult to follow, and I don't quite fully understand it myself. But there's these rituals that the Infernals have access to, and the ultimate ritual is the Flayed Dragon. Very powerful unit, but we're gonna need to see an indicator of when the Infernals can get that to our interface somehow, some way. Maybe like a top bar or like a resource counter somewhere, somehow, because there's a lot of important abilities, a lot of important information that we are missing when we're watching these games. Flayed Dragon though, putting in a lot of work, but is it enough? We still have a bunch of anti-air available right now. The white health is disappearing. Okay, yeah, Flayed Dragon is gonna have to get on out of there. I think it's got an ability that allows it to consume stuff. So it did get a bunch of resources back. Let me just see actually if there are any Flayed Dragon. Oh yeah. The animus cost has been decreased from 500 to 300, okay? Resource cost has been increased from 500, 400 to 500, 500. Vision range has been increased from 12 to 15. Movement speed has been decreased. The fetid breath ability has been increased from 6 seconds to 10, and it now requires a greater shrine. Okay, there's also a new ritual called Effigy. Summons an effigy at the target location that provides Shroud for 60 seconds. There's Hellspawn Resurgence, refreshes all charges on a target Infernal Shrine, Iron Vault, Conclave, or Twilight Spire. And then Shadowfall. Covers the entire map in Shroud for 30 seconds. What? Okay, that sounds pretty nutty. Kdong, moving up towards this high ground over here, is taking care of one of his opponent's bases. It kind of feels like in the late game, yeah, Greg GG's out. He is having a very hard time addressing this maxed out force. Okay, so we just learned that apparently the ultimate Vanguard army has quite a bit of sustain, right? It seems like there's a lot of healing and, well, the amount of additional strength that those troops gain when they prestige is quite insane. So that brings us to the final game in this best of 5 series to determine who the winner of the Elephant Yeti Cup is. Top right hand corner, it's Greg playing with the Infernals. Bottom left, it is Kdong playing with the Vanguard. Again, going for a Conclave together with a Iron Vault. Yeah, building it on the ramp messes up the graphic of that a little bit. Very cool. Ooh, look at that. I don't actually know the... Wait, this section of the map I've not seen before. That looks very complex. Look at Hobbiton over here. There's a Hobbit in that hole somewhere, man. Beautiful. Alright. So Greg is gonna have to change things up a little bit, because winning in the late game with the current units that he's got just does not seem like that great of a plan. So, where do we go from here? What do we do instead? Do we go for an all-in? Do we go for one base pressure? Do we once again play a bit of a macro game? Change up some of the specifics, because that one fight, right, where he came in from the back and he had one of those Magmadons in the middle of his opponent's army using that trample ability, like that seemed like the perfect fight for the Infernals. But apparently Kdong just stood there and, yeah, won the engagement. That seemed a little funny to me. Well, so far this does look very reminiscent of the previous games. Greg once again going for a fast expend off of just a single, yeah, one of each of these units. So he's got a Gaunt, he's got a Grunt, and we're gonna be using, no, a Brute. Grunt Brute, my god. You know what's funny? I used to make fun of my dad whenever I was a kid for always forgetting unit names and getting people's names twisted in his head and stuff. Like, he would always, like, whenever we'd see somebody, say at, like, church, for example, whatever, he would somehow, some way say hello to somebody and then follow it up with the wrong name, right? I was like, Dad, like, why are you not just, first of all, why are you not just remembering the name? And secondly, why are you saying the name in the first place if you know this is not what you should be doing? And now I find myself doing the same thing too. Nobody calls them grunts. Why am I... Anyways. Biokinetics lab right over here, rushed out by Kdong. He's got a barracks. Looks like we're going for a bunch of lancers over here. Okay. Now, what exactly are we gonna send across? I guess we're going for a tower rush. Is that the plan? Kdong is the one ready to mix it up a little bit here. Okay. I thought his previous game was actually quite good for him. Trying his very best. Moving forward. Now, yeah, there's already defensive structure set up as well here for Greg. I don't think there's really much you can do about this. Nah, that's way too much. Shroudstone even coming up. So Greg not really messing around here. This is quite costly though, because he doesn't have a huge economy here. He's decided to dump a ton of money into, well, not losing. Kdong decides to give up on the aggression, because the amount of units that the Infernals can produce so fast is, well, significant, right? So apparently we're going to try and justify some of this unit production by going after a few of the camps around the map. I don't know if I love this right here for Greg. Let's see if Kdong can leverage this into like a big advantage though. So another thing that's missing in this game, or something that we don't currently have, is 1-1 upgrades, for example, right? Like in, for example, StarCraft, you have 1-1 upgrades and 2-2 and 3-3 upgrades. As far as I know, that is not a mechanic they have in this game. So timing attacks in general are not quite there, which I wonder if that lowers the strategic variety just a little bit. Okay. Well, this is still a large army though. Bob's in the mix here as well. Looks like a scary army for Kdong, but honestly, it's really not that many troops. Yeah, those Gaunts are not messing around. He is running them back towards that heal camp. Some of those units in blue. Nice micro here overall by Kdong. Keeping a lot of his low HP troops alive, but the Gaunts are just putting in so much work. I think this might actually just be a little bit too much right here by Greg. It's looked for a little bit like a reverse sweep. We don't really know exactly when that upgrade in the barracks is going to be done. I'm assuming it's going to make those lancers a little bit more powerful. GG. Kdong taps out, and that means it's Greg who obtains the victory over Kdong 3-2.